Black Mirror Season 6 was released in 2023. For those of you who don't know, don't follow the show, it is an amazing watch. One of my favorite shows for sure. And it has 6 seasons available on Netflix. And if you haven't seen any episode, don't worry. It's not like one of those types of shows where you have to follow specific characters or like watch it from, episode 1 through to the latest episode. Each season is it's an anthology. So it's like these individual short stories, if you will. And each one is kind of like its own movie. Think of it that way. So you can literally go in, check out the descriptions, see which ones you might be interested in and like, and just start that way. That's what I did initially years ago when I first got put onto the show, and since have watched every single episode. I think every single episode, actually. I was reading up and refreshing my memory on a few of these episodes. I went back and noticed like 1 or 2 episodes that I either don't remember or maybe never even saw. But yeah, and it's not a lot of episodes per season. Some seasons only have 3 episodes, for example. Some have 6, some have 5, some have 4. This latest season, season 6, has 5 episodes, all of which are really cool. I would say 2 to 3 are awesome. 2 are awesome. 1 is really good, and a couple of them were my favorites, but they were worth the watch either way because it really is a good show. Very well done. And here's the official synopsis of the show. Black Mirror is featuring standalone dramas, sharp, suspenseful, satirical tales that explore techno-paranoia. Black Mirror is a contemporary reworking of The Twilight Zone, with stories that tap into the collective unease about the modern world. And the synopsis for this specific season is twisted tales that span eras and terrors deliver a myriad of surprises in this game-changing anthology series, most unpredictable season yet. And as we like to do here on the Spun Today Podcast, wanted to shout out the folks that make it all possible, the writers. Black Mirror was created and is mainly written by Charlie Brooker, and there was 1 episode here in season 6 that was written by Bisha K. Ali. Shout out to the writers of this amazing series and awesome season. So the very first episode of the season is called Joan is Awful. And the summary is that an average woman discovers a global streaming service has adapted her daily life and her secrets into a drama starring A-list actress Salma Hayek. The name of the streaming service is Streamberry. It's similar to, think of like Netflix, for example. And this lady is essentially, going through her life, goes to work, has certain conversations at work. She has a husband or at least a fiance or live-in boyfriend or something like that they depict their relationship kind of as like very routine, very going through the motions. And she gets a text from like an ex-boyfriend or an old flame and says that he's in town and just wants to meet to say hi for a drink or something like that. And she hesitantly goes, winds up going. I think they wind up kissing or something like that. And then she leaves and goes home. Then they are about to have dinner, her and her boyfriend, and they put on the TV and they say, oh, look, there's a new show called Joan is Awful. What the hell? And her name is Joan. And they start playing it and watching it, and it's going through pretty much everything that happened to her that day. So it shows her, like in the show, it shows Salma Hayek, which plays her character, going through the motions with the boyfriend, goes to work, shows a very similar conversation that she has. Her assistant is very similar and quirky and shows like what she said behind the back of someone that she fired, and almost identical to like what happened to her in real life. So she's watching it like, wait, what the fuck? Is this a joke? Like, what are you doing? What is going on? And then the boyfriend, he's just like, what are you talking about? It's just like a show. But then he even starts catching on like, wait, this is very similar to, this seems like us. And then he sees in the show that she gets a text from an old boyfriend, and then she's like, wait, that didn't happen. That's not true. And then, she wants to stop watching for obvious reasons. He wants to keep watching for obvious reasons. and so on and so forth. In long story short, the world of this main character like falls apart, and in almost real time it's showing this on the show, like in the next episode of Joan is Awful, and just highlighting how she's like a bad person, and she's like flipping out and she goes to a lawyer. She tries to sue Streamberry. She loses her job, and all of this is being depicted on the show as well, right? Like a beat behind what's actually happening in real life. And she's like, how the fuck is this happening? And then the lawyer winds up letting her know that in signing the terms and conditions, you know, like those like pages and pages worth of terms and conditions that we all just like click the checkbox on and click accept, which I believe South Park did an episode of like years ago. But the lawyer explains how in the terms and conditions, one of the things you signed off on was giving your likeness, signing over your likeness to Streamberry. And it's completely legal and they could do what they're doing. And from a company perspective, in Streamberry, they're using some sort of like AI and like high level tech to enrich their algorithm such that it gives the user, like the watcher, the most targeted experience possible, which I can totally see a corporation doing, like something like that through like algorithmic optimization and just like focusing on the bottom line. You know what I mean? Like an evil corporation that just wants to increase profit quarter after quarter after quarter and losing sight of the damage that it's doing otherwise. And then there's another layer to the episode where it gets into this like quantum computing baseline reality versus fictive reality type of thing, as like the Joan is Awful, the main character that we see, that we think is the real Joan. She starts investigating the company and you know, taking matters into her own hands, tries to break into the company and figure out where they have this supercomputer that's facilitating all this. And she finds out that there's layers and layers and layers to this Joan is Awful character, where she's seeing Salma Hayek, this famous actress, playing her life. She is the actress that somebody else in a different layer or a different level of reality is watching her in a similar way on her streaming service, watching the Joan that we think is the real Joan. They're watching her on TV, and so on and so forth. So she's like, wait, she's like contemplating, am I like not even real? Am I like CGI? Am I like AI or something like that? And then it gets into the question of what's real? What are people, quote unquote? What if we do create like AI or like sentient AI? Do they really have feelings and thoughts, and are they real? Should they have rights, etc.? It's really, really interesting. It's like a mind-bending. When you think you know what the episode is about, it winds up opening up like all these other layers and inevitable questions. And that was definitely either my favorite or tied for favorite episode of this season. Joan is Awful. The second episode, Lock Henry, is the one that I would say is like my tied as my favorite episode of the season. And the summary for it is that while filming a nature documentary in a sleepy Scottish town, a young couple catches wind of a juicy local story with ties to shocking past events. Now, in this episode, what stood out to me was, first of all, like the way it was shot. It's very scenic. It's very beautiful looking. The acting is great. Everyone in it, from like the main character, his girlfriend, his mother, his best friend, like stole the show. He was like the comedic relief. It follows this couple that goes back home to the guy's hometown, and the mother's meeting his girlfriend for the first time. And this town is really beautiful, but it's like dead. Like almost nobody's around. It's kind of eerie and creepy, but it's so beautiful. And the girlfriend even notices that, and she's like, what's going on here? Like, you would think that, you know, especially with this weather and this time of year, that this would be like a poppin' place, you know what I mean? Like a vacation spot for folks. And she even asked this to the guy's friend, which is running a family restaurant / pub. And the friend tells him, wait, you didn't tell her about Ian Adar? And remember, they're like these film school kids that are like home from college to do this like nature documentary. And that's what they're into, or to do a documentary period. And they chose to do it about nature, a nature documentary. And the kid is like, no, I didn't want to like speak about that or whatever. And she's like, wait, who's Ian Adar? And the friend, or he and the friend, but mainly he, the main character, he starts telling his girlfriend the story of Ian Adar. And this is probably like the scene that made the episode for me, was his telling of the story of Ian Adar was like perfect, spot on storytelling. Like, it was just enough detail for like listeners and like watchers of the show to like add their own color. And the visuals that they showed during his telling of who Ian Adar was definitely helped as well. But it's absolutely like what roped me into the episode. But essentially, this Ian Adar character was a local guy who's kind of like a loner, creepy guy that used to like go into the pub and drink and get drunk, and lived in a house down the road with a farm. And the main character's father in present time had passed away, but he used to be a police officer. And they tell this very suspenseful story of how there was like one day he got really drunk, this Ian Adar character, after a couple that was on vacation, because it used to be a really popular spot, this place, which ties to the girl's expectation of, you know, why isn't this like a more popular place? It used to be. And then this couple went missing and they couldn't find them. And then one day Ian Adar is in the pub and got really drunk, and then winds up going home, and there's a disturbance in his house, and somebody calls the cops. The father of this kid goes and winds up getting shot by Ian Adar, as the telling of the story. Not killed, but then we find out that later on, from his like wounds and like stuff like that, he got sick and was never the same, and then wound up dying. So the mother and like the family blame Ian Adar for the father's death. But ultimately, they found like this hidden dungeon in the house and like the remains of these people that were missing. And this Ian Adar character was some sort of like serial killer guy. And since then, the town became like a ghost town, hence the state that it's currently in. Now, the girl, she's like, we're not doing a fucking nature documentary anymore. We have to do a documentary about this. This is the story. We have to tell the story. And, you know, they're film buffs, and he's reluctant to do it. Doesn't want to open up like old wounds of, you know, the family and the father dying and this story and stuff like that. The friend wants them to tell the story as well, to see if it brings like more popularity back to the town and more tourists and stuff like that. And the girl's really pushing for it. And even the mother says that it's important to tell the story. So then the kid gets on board and they start, you know, investigating and going into the house that was boarded up and going into that dungeon and taking videos and pictures and all this stuff. And the mother's this very like proper, you know, buttoned up lady, and the kids are walking on eggshells around her, don't want to make too much noise, and, you know, she's nice but very like buttoned up and proper. And long story shorter, as they're investigating and the girlfriend is in the house by herself for some reason, like the guy went to visit with his friend or something like that, I forgot where he went, but she's just like rewatching some of the footage that they shot that day, and they were recording on top of an old VHS tape of some sitcom show that the mom used to watch, and the father. And she finishes watching the footage but leaves the tape playing while she's like writing something down or something like that. And then this other footage comes up of that same dungeon area in the house, but it's like old footage. And she pretty much sees the couple that went missing and the mother of the guy and the father, and they're into this like eyes wide shut style sex torture thing. And the girlfriend is watching this like, what the fuck? And then realizes that the mother and the father, the cop, were the ones that killed that missing couple. And they were, you know, they did it again in this like eyes wide shut style, like sex play torture craziness. And she like stops it, and then right there's like a knock at the door, or the mother opens the door and she's like, oh, dinner's ready. And she you know, she's trying not to freak out. And she's like, okay, I'll be right there. And then winds up going downstairs, but then saying that she's gonna get some air or something like that. And it's nighttime. But ultimately she winds up getting out the house. The mother realizes, you know, goes back to the room, realizes what she saw, and then tries to find the girl. She drives and catches up to her. Then the girl like runs into like a wooded area, like down by a river, and tries to hide. Winds up like slipping and banging her head, and pretty much she drowns in the river and dies. Then the mother, just add another added twist to everything. The mother winds up going back to the apartment, taking out all the VHS tapes and footage and stuff, and writes a letter to her son, which still isn't home, by the way, and explaining to him everything and what she was involved in and what his father was involved in, and that with the footage that's on that tape, he'll make like an amazing documentary. And then she winds up hanging herself, which is sick and unexpected. And then the story goes on to show the kid, being the film buff that he is, but also reluctant to like the whole thing. He winds up putting out this documentary. The town blows up with like tourism and stuff like that. It like fast forwards like a year or two later, and he winds up winning like all these like awards and like Emmys, Grammys, whatever it is that you win for this. But it's like that type of event, and he's like pretty much miserable. Like he has obviously what he wanted with this like documentary filmmaking fame. He brought back life to his hometown, but obviously lost his girlfriend and his mother, and is completely mind fucked with what happened. So dope episode. Lock Henry. Now the next three I'll go a little quicker. We have Beyond the Sea, which was a really good episode. It stars my guy Jesse from Breaking Bad, and he plays this astronaut. He and another character, and it says, in an alternative 1969, two astronauts on a perilous high-tech space mission grapple with the fallout of an unfathomable tragedy back on Earth. And essentially, they're these astronauts that are in deep space, but they have these, only two were made state-of-the-art like physical bodies back on Earth, and they're able, through some sort of technology, lay down in a pod for like in their like spaceship or wherever they are in space, and it puts them to sleep, but like beams their consciousness into this body that's back on Earth, and they could do it for 5 hours, 8 hours a day or something like that, or every so often, and while one does it, the other one has to be in the spaceship, man the spaceship and everything. And the other, does that to spend time with their family. Both of them are like married. They have a kid or two, and they take turns doing this every day. And then the rest of the day, they're working out in space and doing the research and work that it is that they do. Then one day, one of them goes back, and I forget exactly how it happened, but there was, I do remember how it happened. Somebody breaks into their house, and it's like this, think of like the Sharon Tate style murders, but it's like a religious cult, thinking that this is like, ungodly, you're like an abomination here on Earth, you're not really human. It's like that type of mentality that drove these folks to like break into the house. They wound up tying up the guy. He, his body, that's not his real body, but he's beamed in. And then they tie up his wife, his kid, and they wind up killing his wife and child in front of him while he's watching, and he can't do anything about it. And then they can't kill him because it's not really his body, but they fuck up that machine, robot, AI, whatever body, so he can't ever like beam down again. Then he beams back. Obviously, he's in real life, he's in outer space, not in real life, but and he's completely distraught. It's the story blows up. It's pretty much going crazy. And then his other astronaut buddy friend finds out about it, and then he, they speak back to like Space Command or whatever it's called, and they try to give the friend, pointers and things to speak to him about, and they try to like keep tabs on him to see what's going on. Don't fuck up like the mission. And then he has to deal with him coming back to his family and his life, but knowing that he left this unstable person up there that just lost his entire family. And they think of, like, he and his wife think of, once he's like a little bit more settled, they offer him to use his body. So Jesse's character offers him to use his body to go down, to beam down, just so he could feel the air again and be around people. And he winds up doing this. They wind up doing it every so often. It's helping him but then he and the wife kind of hit it off a little bit, and he's into painting and they get a little flirty. The wife, pushes back on the whole thing eventually, but then Jesse's character finds out about it, gets upset, tells him that he's not going to let him, beam down anymore. They're not supposed to be doing that anyway because it like breaks protocol. And then the guy convinces him to do it one more time just so he could apologize to the wife. And he reluctantly agrees. Then he comes back, and then the next time Jesse beams down, and he sees blood everywhere. He's like, what the fuck? And then he realizes the guy beamed down that last time and wound up killing his wife and kid. And he has no other option but to like beam back up, He beams back up, and the story ends with him just like flipping out, but then him telling him to like take a seat. He's like completely calm and fucking psycho, but tells him, take a seat. Now we're even, basically. I lost my family, you lost yours. You can't tell anybody about it because, there's nothing anybody can do. We weren't even supposed to be beaming in each other's bodies or whatever the hell. That was a really good episode. Now, the last two that I'll mention, Maisie Day. The main character is played by Zazie Beetz from Atlanta. Great actress. It wasn't my favorite episode. It's a troubled Hollywood starlet goes to great lengths to escape packs of invasive paparazzi as she deals with the aftermath of a hit and run. And yeah, it wasn't a favorite episode of mine. She plays a paparazzi that's like in the paparazzi game and wants out, wants a different life, but they're tracking this like super popular actress who's trying to like hide out in rehab because she has like a drug problem. And then there's like this, I don't know, felt like lazy twist, unexpected. I don't know, maybe not lazy, but because it got me like I was interested in the episode just because of like the acting and the writing in general and the characters in it, and it was somewhat suspenseful. But like what happened at the end, I was like, oh, come on, which was pretty much the starlet that they were tracking down was in this like rehab place and like tied down, and they wound up trying to save her because she pretty much went into this rehab place and they like tied her down to like fight off the drugs, and she was gonna get sick and throw up and stuff like that, and they didn't want her like breaking out and getting drugs or anything, so it would be like an easier time for her if she was just tied down. So the paparazzis, Zazie Beetz and a couple other folks, they track her down. They try to get a picture of her because it's worth a lot of money in the rehab place, but then they realize that she's tied down, and when they go to free her, and she winds up turning into a werewolf. So and she winds up killing a couple of paparazzi. Zazie Beetz gets away, and then at the end I think winds up killing her as well. But yeah, that was a little far-fetched in my opinion, but the acting was great. And the last one is called Demon 79. This is Northern England, 1979. A meek sales assistant discovers she must commit terrible acts to prevent an imminent disaster. This was another one that was good. It keeps you roped in because you want to know if it's true or not, what she's going through. And it's this Indian girl in 1979. She sells shoes. She works at like a mall's department store selling shoes. And the people she works with and, her boss and coworker and stuff like that, they all treat her different. And they say, oh, you have stinky food. And she's very othered. Her neighbors or the people treat her like very differently. And then this like demon appears that only she can see and hear, and tells her that she has to essentially kill 3 people or the entire world would end. So they're showing this, and you as the viewer are like, is this real or not? Is she like a schizophrenic imagining demons and shit, or is this like really happening within this world? And she's going through those same emotions. She's like, she thinks she's going crazy, but then ultimately is convinced of this, and winds up going through the motions and doing things with the demon. And the demon tries to like egg her on and motivate her to kill people. And I forget what it was. If it had to be only good people, it couldn't be bad people, because bad people would be too easy. It has to be like 3 innocent people, something like that. Or if it was the other way around, if it had to be bad people and couldn't be innocent people, and she wound up killing like an innocent person. I think that's what it was. She wound up killing an innocent person, and that person didn't count, so she wound up killing like an extra person. And then at the end, she winds up getting caught like in the act, and is there's like a cutoff time. It's like midnight at 3 days later or something like that, the world was going to end. And she's like in the interrogation room with the cops, and they're writing her off as fucking crazy. The clock struck 12, nothing happened. And then she's like coming to the realization, holy shit, I killed these people, I am crazy. It's 12 o'clock and nothing happened. And then like 3 or 4 minutes later, you hear sirens going off, and like the town's like foghorns, and everyone in the precinct is like going to the windows, and you just see like bombs and fire and plague and just like everything going to shit. And then she comes to the realization of, oh, I'm not crazy. So she's happy about that. But then at the same time, oh, but the world is ending. So there is that. But yeah, Black Mirror, dope series. Like I said in the beginning of this little recap and review, go back to see all the seasons, all the episodes. Some of them are fucking amazing. A lot of them are great. Most of them are either great or really good. And there's like I could count on one hand, less than one hand, probably just 2 or 3 that even the ones that, like I mentioned in this season 6, the last 2 episodes weren't my favorite, but they were, it wasn't like, oh, why'd I watch that? You know what I mean? And that is my little recap and review of Black Mirror season 6, available on Netflix.